We hope that after seeing the program tonight, you'll come to Decorah if you're able to and see the Innovators and Inventors exhibit in person. It opens to the public this Friday, September 24th, and will be open at Vesterheim through May of 2022. Vesterheim's main building and museum store are open daily from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We hope to see you soon. Next, I would like to extend a very special thank you to our generous sponsors, the Thompson Family Foundation. We are so grateful for their vision and enthusiasm for uplifting the many contributions of Norwegian Americans and for making this exciting exhibit and lecture series possible. And now we have a special message for you from our dear friends, OJ and Pat Thompson, speaking on behalf of the Thompson Family Foundation.
Well, my name is OJ Thompson, and this is my wife Pat, and we've been patrons of Vesterheim for many, many years. We've been over there many times with our family when our children were small and introduced them to some of their heritage, Norwegian heritage, and we go to Decorah quite often. Such a beautiful city, such a historic city, and Pat, what do you say a few words?
Well, I think Vesterheim is a great asset to Decorah and to Northeast Iowa. It's a destination place whenever we have company that like to show off our Norwegian heritage and all the things they've collected there and all the folk art festivals that they put on. And this is a great opportunity to show the great contributions that Norwegians made to America.
Well, Pat and I were especially interested in the Innovators and Inventors series that's being presented in September and in October. I was born in Kenton, South Dakota, a little Norwegian community just over the Iowa border into South Dakota. Merle Tuvey and E.O. Lawrence both came from Kenton, were born and raised there, and were neighborhood kids growing up in Boy Scouts together and so on. They became very important to this country and with their inventions. So I'm happy that some of that will be presented this fall at our lecture series and meetings, and it was especially interesting to me. And it's just been a privilege to have the opportunity to sponsor this with others, and looking forward to it. And we want to welcome everybody to Vesterheim. Come here and enjoy the museum, enjoy the presentations, and enjoy yourselves.
Thank you for your kind words, OJ and Pat. Next, I'll bring in our moderator, Dr. Marin Anderson Johnson, who is a Vesterheim trustee and also an associate professor of Nordic Studies at Luther College. Marin serves as the Thompson Family Chair in Norwegian Language and Modern Nordic Culture and is the director of the Torgersen Center for Nordic Studies. Thank you for leading the discussion this evening, Marin. And now it is my great pleasure and honor to introduce our featured speaker, Sonja Hoel Perkins. In 2015, Worth magazine included Perkins in their list of the 100 most powerful people in finance in the world. She has over 30 years of experience investing in the technology sector and has gone on to launch 2 investment funds, the Perkins Fund, which invests in people and companies that matter, and Broadway Angels, an angel investment group made up of women who are world-class investors and business executives. In addition to her groundbreaking work in the venture capital industry, Perkins is also the founder of Project Glimmer, a nonprofit serving at-risk teenage girls. The mission of Project Glimmer is to inspire every girl to envision, and realize an empowered future. Perkins is also featured in the book Alpha Girls, the women upstarts who took on Silicon Valley's male culture and made the deals of a lifetime, by Julian Guthrie. Copies of this book are available for purchase through Vesterheim's museum store. And a special note, for those of you who are avid readers of Vesterheim magazine, you may remember a story in the 2020 issue titled Immigrant that was written by Sonja's mother, Uni. The story which tells about Uni's experience growing up in Nazi-occupied Norway and immigrating to the United States at just 14 years of age, is now available for you to read on Vesterheim's blog. Sonja, in her presentation tonight, will share a little bit about how being a child of immigrant parents has shaped her life and her career. Welcome, Sonja, and thank you for being here this evening to share your inspiring story. And without further ado, Sonja Hoel Perkins.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Wonderful. Yeah, go for it, Sonja.
No, go for it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to extend, I know Diane and Vesterheim, and we are just so excited. And I am excited for the opportunity to have a conversation this evening about the amazing work that you have done and kind of your vocational calling and how you are setting the pace for invention and innovation here in the United States and globally in this world. So thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be part of this and the kickoff for this event.
Well, wonderful. I know you sent a bunch of questions. I'm not sure how you want to do this. Do you want to do question and answer? Do you want me to speak? I'm happy to.
Yeah, I think, should we kick it off with a few questions? And I think
Sure.
we'll invite people with the Q&A as we go through please hop in and I will try and moderate some of those questions and as we work through. But I guess one of the places to start this evening is to just, could you tell us a little bit about what a venture capitalist is? And how did you find your way? What's the story that brought you into this career field and how kind of your story has evolved?
It's interesting. So the history of venture capital is it used to be in the early days of computing, banks would loan money to startups to help build their businesses out. And the banks realized pretty quickly that when you loan money to a business, they can either pay it back or not pay it back. But some of these businesses were so risky that they were losing money on all the bad deals and not getting any of the upside on the good deals. And so they decided to change the model from debt to equity. And so what venture capitalists do is they put up risk dollars into usually startups, but it could also be later stage company. It really depends, but they're usually companies that are private. And they put money into these ideas and they help them grow because a lot of times companies that are startups, they don't have revenue. They don't even have a product. And so it's really impossible to have revenue and profit to fund a company when you're still building a product. And a lot of times the businesses, it's not even clear that there's a market. You think there might be a market, but it's not clear. And so venture capitalists put money in these companies, and if they do well, they own a percentage of the company. And so their risk is the dollars in and the upside is basically unlimited. But then if the company goes out of business, they get nothing and that's it. So I first joined the venture capital industry in January of 1989, which was a very, very long time ago. And I was right out of college. I will be quick to point out that I do not have the background of a traditional venture capitalist. A traditional venture capitalist is male, has an engineering degree, and has operating experience, working in a company and sometimes very senior operating experience. But I had worked in college as a computer programmer, and I worked in the computer lab at UVA, University of Virginia. And I also taught Lotus to business professionals. And then also after college, I worked on the London Stock Exchange, helping move from a paper-based system to an electronic-based system called Big Bang. It was one of the first automated computer projects ever. And so when I came back from my European adventure after college, I really wanted to look at companies or work at a company that looked at everything, that looked at marketing and sales and finance and pretty much every department in a company. And I decided that venture capital or management consulting were the two areas for me. I was very naive. I don't think management consulting actually does look at the whole thing, but I didn't know. It seemed like a good idea. And I ended up getting a job in a venture capital firm. And the venture capital firm that I worked for was a company called TA Associates, and it was located in Boston. And it was one of the first venture capital funds to realize that software was valuable. So software is written by engineers. It's a lot of X's and O's and ones and zeros. And people thought at the time that when the engineers go home, that so does the value of the product. But our firm figured out that you could write the software once and sell it over and over and over and over. It's actually a fantastic business model. And so the firm had very great success in investing in mainframe computing and mid-range computing, but they had no experience in PC investing because the PC had just come out. Microsoft wasn't, or maybe it had just gone public. It was a very, very early days. And so my job, which I loved, was to cold call every CEO in America that I could possibly find that was starting a software company. And I literally had directories like this thick. I would go to business libraries. We didn't have the internet then, so you had to really dig. And I was probably more of a researcher or a reporter than a technologist, but I was really good at finding companies, and I was really good at understanding good business models. And so after calling literally hundreds and probably thousands of companies, I really got the hang of it. And 3 of the companies that I cold called, and some of them I would follow over and over and over, because most of the early software companies in the early days were profitable and they didn't need money. But I just continued to convince them that they wanted to raise more money so they could grow faster and be the leader in the market. And so 3 of the companies that I invested in went public. And so I was under the age of 24 years old. I had 3 companies that had already gone public that I was the originator of the deal. And I was off to a great career. And after that, I went to business school at Harvard Business School, and then ended up at Menlo Ventures and was a partner there for 22 years before I started the Perkins Fund. And so I tell the story mainly because I like to show that you don't have to have a certain background to be good at this job. And I think it's really important that the funds are diverse because you could get a lot more experiences and points of views for investing.
That's an incredible story. So how did those cold calls go? I mean, I'm very curious. I mean, what was the reaction from people when you?
It was really early days. And I think that a lot of the entrepreneurs were flattered that I called them, to be perfectly honest. And I think because I was a woman, they were very polite to me, very polite. But there's a really good article that's in Wired, and it's called something like "The Woman Who Saved John McAfee from an Epically Bad Deal." And so I called John McAfee. Well, first I read about him in PC Magazine, and I couldn't figure out. Well, I read about McAfee, the company, which is an antivirus company, which every computer needs antivirus software. So it was obviously a big market. In the days when you didn't have a cell phone, you had a car phone if you had a phone. And he answered the phone and he told me that too bad he just agreed to sell his company to Symantec, but he hadn't signed anything yet. And so I said, well, we'll buy the company, except you get to keep half. And I made this deal as a early 20s. I had no authority to make this deal. And I basically told him we'd buy the company. And then I just prayed for forgiveness when I talked to the senior partners in the firm. But it was a phenomenal business model. I think they had 5.4 million in revenue and 5 million in pre-tax profits. I mean, that's how profitable software companies can be. And their distribution was over the bulletin board networks, which was a precursor to the internet. And so it was just a really good model, and it worked out very well for everyone involved. So feedback was good.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Thank goodness there were even car phones back in the day. I remember those bolted into the floor of the car, right?
I probably would have gone to his house to find him if somebody had given me his address. I mean, if I had the nose for a good deal, and I would not give up. I mean, part of this industry is just not giving up, right? Just not giving up.
Incredible. Incredible. How has the transition been from working for the Menlo Fund to now the Perkins Fund? How is the transition in that kind of shifting or a pivot point in your career? How has that been?
Yeah, it's been really great. So I started the transition from Menlo Ventures to what was next in 2010, when my daughter was 2 years old, and I was commuting an hour each way to work, and just had a lot going on, and I decided I wanted to have a little bit more control over what I invested in and also who I invested with. And I also wanted to see my daughter in the morning before, when she woke up, and also be there when she went to bed. And for little kids, they go to bed, very late, or they get up late and get whatever. So anyway, I decided that I wanted to start Broadway Angels because at the time there were so few women in the venture industry, but there were women in the venture industry. And everyone said that there weren't any women. I'm like, of course there are women. And so I pulled together the top women in venture capital, as well as top women founders of companies. And we started to do deals together and share deals. And it turned out to be so good that I decided to dedicate a fund, the Perkins Fund, to invest in these deals. And it's been great. I talk about investing in people and companies that matter because, time is so precious. And I actually think it's important for everyone to figure out, like, what am I doing and why am I doing it? Whatever I'm doing today, does it fit under my mission statement of like what matters? And so for me, it was people and companies that matter, which included my family, which included companies that move the world forward. It included, just entertainment for myself, if that mattered that day, but it's about like having more control over like what you do and making sure that everything you do is purposeful. So I would say the transition has been fantastic. It's been really great.
That's an incredible part of your story. I mean, I think when the first time we met just over Zoom a few weeks ago, I was so struck with your passion for storytelling, and that your passion for the making sure that the why of what we're doing is at the center, and that the mission is at the center of everything we do. So in your work today, what would you claim is what's your why, or what's your mission statement that you kind of work with as your rubric for your professional life, but perhaps even personal life as well?
Yeah. So for work, I mean, number one, if I'm going to make investments in a company, I want to make money doing it. So my co-founder of Broadway Angels, Magdalena Yassel, she says it's not charity. Like we're making investments because we want to make good returns. But at the same time, we want to move society forward. With a lot of consumer technology and a lot of social media technology and those kinds of things, they're not moving society forward. I don't want to be part of an app that addicts children, right? It's just not, it's not going to help the world. And I don't think it's going to help me in the long term if, we have a bunch of people who aren't educated and addicted to their phones. So I'm trying to find problems that will make the world better. And I'll give you an example of a new company called Alethea Group. And the company is located in Washington, D.C., and it deals with the problems of misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. And I'm sure we've all heard a lot of information on the topics of fraudulent elections and, what's wrong, fraudulent issues with the COVID vaccine and, those kinds of things. And then companies have these problems where someone will just put something on the dark web and it'll say, oh, there's, poison in your food or whatever it is. And these companies, they found that the security is no longer inside their network. The security issues, it's outside the networks. And so they help businesses and organizations kind of solve these problems before they become big problems. And I think it's kind of the next generation security. And so, McAfee was one of the first generations with antivirus, and that's the other one. But I also invest in a lot of women. So the industry average of funding for women founders is 2% from venture capital. My percentage is about 40%. So it's much, much higher.
Wow.
And ironically, it's not because I'm lowering my bar. I'm actually just opening my mind. And so companies like The Real, which was founded by Julie Wainwright, you can fund and make really great investments. And Alethea Group actually has a woman CEO as well. And then I also have been investing in Black women. The industry average for that is, I think, 0.2%. And the Perkins Fund is at 12%. And in order to have more, Black girls wanting to become entrepreneurs or wanting to get into technology, you need to have more role models. And so a number of brands, some of them are like Healthy Root Dolls or Adama Degbo, to all kinds of things. And so I just think that society is a better place when there's more access to dollars from venture capital. So I care about that. And I think probably because I'm older and I have a track record, I have the luxury that I can do that. But I think that I'm hopefully encouraging the whole industry to kind of step up and make a balanced portfolio. And basically, there's so much research. I think McKinsey did a big study and they found that diversity actually provides better returns. And so I actually think my returns are going to be even better than they were in the past. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but I'm very optimistic about that. And I feel that as a successful woman, if I don't make a stand and if I don't stand up for women and if I don't put my money where my beliefs are, who is going to do it? Right. And so it's been a great journey and I've really enjoyed all of it.
That's incredible. It's really empowering to talk about the message of diversity as growth, a growth mindset, right? In many different ways. And that really is a powerful message for this time in the world, in the United States and in the world these days. We've got one question that in the Q&A from Thor, who's asking, so not all your investments can prove to be fruitful. Can you mention one of that didn't perhaps maybe meet the benchmarks that you had hoped, or maybe even failed?
A good number of them fail. Which one to choose from?
Yes.
There was one company that was in the music space. It was called Moog, and it was like Spotify, except it was before Spotify. And the CEO was very proven, a great guy. We had a lot of the music industry on our board, including Rick Rubin. And we had one issue, was that the record labels were allowing Spotify to give music away for free in Europe, but they wouldn't let us give music away for free in the US. And so what happened was Spotify, everybody loves Spotify, free music, free streaming music, right? And Moog was literally, poised to be the leading company, but the labels basically didn't enable that because you can't compete with free. So then they allowed Moog to give free music the same time when Spotify came to the United States. And so Spotify clearly had bigger market share, although we had a much better product. But at the same time, it was clearly a stressful time, as you can imagine. And, I worked with the CEO, David Hyman, and the board, and we were the largest investor in the company, and we had a lot of money, and we ultimately sold it to Beats. And that was the, Dr. Dre and the headphone company. That was actually my best business meeting I've ever had in my entire life. That was really fun being down at Beats. And we sold it to them. We didn't lose all of our money, but we didn't, get a huge return on it. And then it ultimately, Beats got sold to Apple for $3 billion, and mainly because they wanted to buy the music piece because they needed the fundamentals for Apple Music. And so it was one of those like up and down and heartbreaking. But when I look back at it, I really am proud of the company because one, it's still around and it's a very important technology today. And, sometimes you just get the market wrong. And, and even if the market is wrong or the timing is wrong, and it ultimately becomes part of something and then a big part of something else, I feel pretty good about that. Like I hate when I get the market wrong. And so that was disappointing, but then fast forward, I always say the best references are when companies are not doing well, because that's when you determine who you are and who the team is. And I don't look at it as the management team's problem. I look at it as our problem and how do we solve it. And now the CEO, he is the CEO of a new company called Unagi Scooters. And you should look it up. Everybody look up Unagi Scooters. And basically they're the scooters like the Lime scooters or, that you could pick up on the street, but you can you don't rent them, but you lease them. So you have your own assigned scooter just for you. You don't have to worry about if you can find one, in your laugh smile trip from the bus station to your office. And the company is doing incredibly well. I think it's going to be a hugely successful company. And I had the opportunity to invest in it because I didn't give the CEO like the worst time when his company went out of business, because he was a good person. And, businesses will always go out of business. I mean, that's the problem. You don't know if the market's going to be big enough, or you don't know if the timing is right, or if you don't know if the product is going to work. But it's one of those things where, that's why we have the venture capital industry, because we're used to having failures, and we're used to maybe not always getting it right. But then on the opposite side, you have your winners, and the winners hopefully, pay for your losers over and over and over. So that's the way it's supposed to work.
That's a fascinating example, talking about the power of relationships too.
Yeah.
Right. That it is, at the end, it is a people. There's a connection there, the human connection.
And I even when things are tough in board meetings, I literally will remind the board, this is just business. It's not your family. It's not your health. It's not, the world. It's just a business. And, to take it down to a smaller, more manageable problem than, having it become all encompassing. So it's just business, right?
Yeah, totally. So you have invested in a lot of amazing startups and people who have seeds of ideas that are inventing and innovating new things that end up being powerhouses for generations, right? The McAfee story, that's amazing. And so in this last 18 months, I mean, we have seen the world go upside down, sideways, the whole world, as we've dealt with the COVID-19 pandemic and everything. But as we enter this time in the 21st century, as we're looking at all that is going on in the world, what role do you see invention and innovation playing as we go forward in these next years?
No, it's a really great question, because I would say that innovation before now has all been about technology. It's been about computers and networking. I'd say before January 9th, 2007, when the iPhone came out, it was about technology that was focused on making businesses more competitive in the world, right? It was the Microsofts and the Salesforces and the Workdays, and it was all these great companies that were trying to make us more productive so we could better compete with the world. And then the iPhone came. And I'm very biased about this. And it became the biggest time sink for every child in the world. And it became a very consumer-oriented thing. And it was about entertainment and pleasure. And sure, there's definitely apps like telemedicine apps and things like that. But it doesn't make our world compete better. In fact, I would say that it's actually made us compete a lot less. And so that's disappointing. But I think in terms of computer technology, we're there. Like the tech revolution is probably over, or it's, there's still going to be innovation in technology, but it's not going to be like Moore's law, and it's not going to be just dramatic like it had been, in the days that I was at TA and even at Menlo. But the 21st century is going to bring a lot of innovation in the medical field. We've seen an example that sadly had to come to fruition with this mRNA, this messenger RNA. It is a technology that people have been working on for literally decades. And it was just there at the right time when we needed a vaccination, right? I mean, it was just unbelievable. There's another technology called CRISPR, which deals with gene editing. And all of a sudden, you can take diseases like HIV and you can cut out the gene that is embedded in the DNA to do that. And I think there's going to be more and more and more of that. And I actually joined my first biotech board, which I've never been on a biotech board. And I told the founder, the founders, I've never been on a biotech board, but they seem to want me on the board anyway. And it's called Mercy Bioanalytical. And the company was started by literally a genius who grew up in the foster system. And then he was discovered by this gentleman named Paul Blavin, who helped put him through the University of Michigan for college. And he came up with a technology or a methodology to detect cancers early using what's called extracellular vesicles. And in the past, early detection of cancer was only done by finding sheds of tumors in the bloodstream, which are very hard to find and very microscopic. So early detection of cancer is very, very, very hard. And these guys, I guess I don't know if the data is public or not, but they're well ahead of the industry average, which was 17%. And so I think there'll be a pan-cancer test within the next 5 years that will be able to detect cancers, all kinds of cancers in everybody. It'll just be like you go to the doctor and you get your test. So I'm very excited about biotech, and I really think a lot of these healthcare issues that have been very difficult to solve will be solved. So that's where I see the new innovation going forward.
So in some ways, it seems that the COVID-19 pandemic maybe have been an opportunity. And maybe there was a push that came through the medical field, right? Invention.
Well, I mean, it was already there. There's a book I would recommend people to read called Code Breakers by Walter Isaacson. And it talks about Jennifer Doudna and her work and the whole science behind and the whole history behind the mRNA vaccine. So it's very exciting. So that's my new thing.
That's fabulous. Very cool. Well, we've got a question from one of our participants this evening that asked the vast majority of venture capitalists is invented in companies on the West or East Coast in the United States. Mm-hmm. And what can startups in the middle of the country do to become more attractive to venture capitalists or venture capitalist investment?
Yeah, that's a really good question. A very good question. One, I think it's changing because I think people have moved all around due to COVID. So now you can be in Texas and Chicago and, all kinds of areas. So I do think it's changing. There are groups like Innovation Norway that, they come from Oslo and all around Norway. They come to the US and they meet with venture capitalists here. So you can come out here and visit. But I personally think if you have a good idea, as long as you have a really good market and you're solving a really big problem with a unique technology, you can get attention by venture capitalists all over the place. I mean, you got to be solving a big problem. And so, some companies move, they come out here, but I think now people are staying put and there's more dollars that are going around. But it always has been an unfair competitive advantage, though, for Silicon Valley-based companies, because most of the VCs are out here. And although they're moving to Miami and they're moving to Austin, Texas. So go to Miami and Austin, Texas, if you want to get some of their attention, if you don't want to come here, because it's just easier to get to the companies and you can be a lot more value added if you're closer versus, millions of miles away.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating. That's awesome. That's wonderful. So maybe we'll shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about this incredible identity and background that you carry with you everywhere you go, which is your Norwegian and Norwegian American identity a little bit. And it was fun to hear it in your biography and also hear you talk about it before. But how do you see your Norwegian and your Norwegian American identities either shaping your work or shaping you? And how kind of has that become an evolving understanding as you have through your life?
Yeah, well, I definitely grew up in a Norwegian household. My parents would speak Norwegian when they wanted to tell secrets. My mother very strategically did not teach us Norwegian so she could tell secrets right in front of us, although I understood a little bit, so it was okay. But my parents both had very hard childhoods. My grandparents on my dad's side immigrated from Bergen, and Bergen was not the place today. So they all came here before oil was discovered in Norway. So they didn't have the social safety programs. It was not like it is today. And so My dad's family immigrated to New York, to Brooklyn, New York. They lived in Bay Ridge, which has a very large population, or had a large population of Norwegian immigrants. They lived in a tenement. They didn't have a lot of extra things. And even when my grandmother, when she got older, you'd open up her closet and she'd have all the wrapping paper saved and all the tin foil saved, because not only were they poor from Norway, they also lived through the Great Depression, right? Which was very, very hard. And so my father learned that you really needed to get an education if you wanted to get out, and you needed to have options. And so he went to City College of New York. He got his doctorate degree at Berkeley, and he really did well. And then my mom, the poor thing, she, was living in World War II, and then her parents got divorced, and she ended up, trying to live without her mom in Norway. And then her grandfather died, and she had to move back to the United States, where my grandmother had moved for just a short while to be with her. And so neither one of them had an easy childhood. And I think when you think of all immigrants, especially the immigrants today, the ones from Afghanistan, the ones from Syria, the ones from, all over the Haiti, they're not having, their first generation is not having an easy time either. And so I think that they've really, both of them, put the burden on me to create my own opportunities. And they both displayed very clear ways of saying, hard work is a habit. Like whatever you do it well. You don't know where it's going to benefit or not. But if you don't work hard, for sure, you're not going to get any benefits. And so I think I just have that first generation American, immigrant type thing, work ethic, right? I don't look like today's immigrant, but I was yesterday's, or my parents were yesterday's immigrants, and they did not have a easy time at all. And we forget that, literally one generation ago, how hard it was for Italians and Norwegians and Irish and, that whole European group of immigrants. So, and I think we can all agree that immigrants really make our country better. So because of hard work. And I think hard work, you look at a lot of the companies that get funded by venture capitalists and get started, like Google's and Intel's and, all of these companies, they were started by immigrants, right? I mean, these immigrants start amazing companies. And so the culture, I think, is just very embedded into Silicon Valley and working. And a lot of, like in the Alpha Girls book, there are 4 of us. And I think 3 of us are daughters of immigrants, if not immigrants ourselves. No, 2 are immigrants, and then I'm first generation. So it's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, totally. So we've got one, this will kind of bring us together, talking a little bit about Vesterheim and then the immigrant story a little bit. We've got one question from an audience member tonight saying, so with your passion, and we talked a lot about your passion for storytelling kind of at the beginning, and the notion of why. And so we think about an organization like Vesterheim. That is, the mission is to tell the immigrant story, to keep the immigrant story of Norwegian immigrants to the United States alive. What do you see as the significance of an organization like Vesterheim today?
Well, I think Vesterheim is so important, and I think it's probably the only museum of its kind in America, or at least the one that I know of, where you're remembering where we came from. And I think all of us like to have a connection with our past as well as our future. And I love the new focus that Vesterheim is taking on telling the stories of immigrants, right? Not just the stuff, not just the rusamaling and the whatever the dishes or the costumes, although I think that's fascinating, right? But I just love the connection to history in the past. And if you go to Norway and you see Norwegians in America, they're very proud of being Norwegian. I mean, there are more Norwegian immigrants by a million times in America than there are Norwegians in Norway. I mean, the Norwegians kind of laugh about that. There's 100 times more Norwegians in America than there are here, right? But I think it's great that keeping the culture and keeping the history to the past, it's nice. It helps to remember who we are and who we came from, and also to have empathy towards new immigrants and new people. So I think it's phenomenal. And you have you do have amazing speakers. And I've been out there when the king was out and the queen, and that was really fun. My mom came with me that time, and it's just great. And I'm very proud of Norway. I mean, Norway is a great country. We were talking earlier about how, they have healthcare for everybody. They have education for everybody. They're very welcoming, and they're working on having clean energy and having, zero emissions as part of global warming. And I think they're trendsetters. I mean, they really, really are. And, there's a lot of people that debate the pros and cons of those things. But if you look at Norway as a country, there's very few homeless people. There still are, but people are happy. There's nobody's really rich, but no one's poor either. And it's very, it's kind of a great example of how the world could be. So I'm very proud to be Norwegian.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
So are there exciting Norwegian inventions that you see on the market, or things that you see Norway innovating on? I know we can't not all details can always be divulged, but do you see a market for innovation in Norway? And do you see a market for innovation in Norway?
Well, of course. I mean, Norway is a customer. It's a smaller population. Isn't the population like 4 million people? So it's kind of like Israel. There's so much great innovation that comes out of Israel and comes out of Norway, but you can't just sell to Norway, right? I mean, it's too small of a market, unless it's something very highly specialized, like a bunad or something like that. Yeah. But Siri came from a Norwegian. So the Norwegian founder of Siri, he created that, and Steve Jobs saw it and loved it and put it in every iPhone. I mean, so there is a lot of great innovation that comes out of Norway, and also a lot of interest in innovation from Norwegians. Like, Norwegians are willing to take risks. There's venture capitalists in Norway, and they, as I mentioned earlier, they like to come here and learn more, and how does it get done, and that kind of thing. So it's a great culture for innovation.
Yeah. We got one question in the chat, and what about why Norwegians are investing so much energy and money in electrical operations, and when battery technology has some way to go to achieve more success without explosions and fires and heavyweight and stuff. Are you exploring the energy markets in investment these days? And do you have any read on the Norwegian?
I haven't spent so much time in the energy market. The problem with the energy market and the green market is that people have been focusing on that for pretty much the entire time that I've been an investor, and it just hasn't worked very well. I think it is going to work now very well. I mean, I think Tesla is a great example of how that's going to work. Battery technology has always been tough, right? Because it's material science. It's not like software where you can just, write it over and over. And so there are issues with battery, but I mean, Norway, they have so much hydroelectricity like that. I mean, that's one of their best assets, is this all this water that comes running everywhere. I mean, it's a really good source of energy. So, I do think that environmental technologies will really, really become more important. And you can see that already with like solar technology and things like that has improved tremendously. So it's happening. And I think there's a lot more interest and a lot more dollars going in the space. And I actually think people will become the market for solar, and the market for these innovations in clean tech hasn't really been there, because it's like, well, I mean, I would buy a gasoline car or a Tesla car, but the gasoline car is so much cheaper. So I'm not going to do that. But now people are, the pricing is changing, as well as the motivations are changing. So I think there's going to be a much better market for clean tech going forward.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that the Norwegian model, right, of incentivizing the green car, the electric car, right? We saw the incredible market for Tesla in Norway just skyrocket, right? And then just because of the financial incentives, right? And now they're trying to rebalance and figure out what the mobility.
I heard a statistic that Norway was either the number 1 or number 2 buyer of Teslas in the world, either ahead of the United States or behind. It was very close. I mean, very, very close. They are nice cars too. So
Yeah. Yeah. So they have incentive. It's amazing to see what incentivizes. And that was a tax incentive there for electric cars in Norway, but it will be interesting to see the market that emerges that you're pointing to here as well. Fabulous. So Sonja, what would you, if you have a young person, a young individual at 23, 24, thinking about a work in the field of venture capitalist, as a venture capitalist, what advice or what recommendations would you give a person looking to break into this field?
Yeah, I have to say it is hard to get into the field. And so the best way to get into the field is to get a job working for the kind of company that venture capitalists like to invest in. So, a company like a Google or a Tesla, or, working, for a well-run company that is important. Also, I think you need to bring something new to the table. So, these VC funds, they're pretty well done on enterprise software, and they've got, networking down. But, a few years ago, people who knew anything about crypto were definitely desirous, kind of like how I was when I knew a little bit about PCs and nobody knew anything. So kind of stay on the cutting edge of tech and just follow what's happening and what's happening there. And then, there's so many resources about what venture capital is and how to raise it and how to find it. There's like the Y Combinators, and Andreessen Horowitz has all these resources on their webpage. And then there's been so many books written about venture capital. I mean, when I was first in the industry, there was nothing. I mean, nobody even knew what it was, right? And so, people obviously did, but not that many people. So just do it. And then I also would recommend just start investing in liquid stocks, the public stocks, like learn how to invest and think about like what makes a good business model. And, my husband was a trader on Wall Street, and he's a really good investor. And, he tells young people, don't invest in companies that have any debt, right? Just focus on the cash flows and kind of find what your model is, because it's really easy to invest. You can even look at places like Angel List and, go to Kickstarter, look at ideas, see what's happening there. You don't have to invest, but just see what's happening. There's just stuff everywhere. And then of course, I think the best way to get a job is through networking. If you know somebody that's in the industry or have a connection or a contact, do something for them or, offer to help. I always found that the best mentors and the people who are my best advocates, I'd say, okay, what can I do for you? How can I make your life easier? And they were always available for me. And, that really, really helped a lot.
That's fabulous. It's about, I think the themes through our conversation this evening are about relationships and the stories and finding the things that bind us together. And Sonja, your immigrant background, your Norwegian Americanness has brought you to this place at Vesterheim and this night at Vesterheim. And we are so very thankful for all of your brilliant sharings with us in this community. I know there are more questions in the chat, but we are so thankful for our time together tonight and thankful for your sharing. You're just very generous sharing and telling and sharing of your story.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been really fun. And I want to say hi to my parents. I think my mom and dad are on this. So hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. So.
It's so fabulous. Well, our evening is going to wind up with a few comments from Chief Curator at Vesterheim, Lauren Gilbertson. And Sonja, again, tusen takk, som vi skal si på norsk. And thank you again. And thank you to Vesterheim and the Thompson Family Foundation for sponsoring this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions, everyone. And thank you especially to Sonja and Marin for being with us tonight. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank the Thompson Family Foundation, the sponsors of the lecture series and the exhibit at Vesterheim. It's going to be an exhibition opening on Friday of this week, September 24th, and will be on view through May of 2022. The next lecture in the series is virtual and will explore the theme of historic innovation in two parts. On November 8th is Historic Innovation Part 1 with Jamie Holmes. Holmes is the author of 12 Seconds of Silence, How a Team of Inventors, Tinkerers, and Spies Took Down a Nazi Superpower. Holmes will tell the dramatic story of Merle Tuve and the scientists of Section T and their work to develop the proximity fuse, an invaluable asset to the Allies in World War II and the world's first smart weapon. On November 15th, we'll welcome Merle Tuve's daughter, Lucy Tuve Comley, and Christine Tuve Burris, who is the daughter of Richard Tuve. These brothers made significant contributions to the fields of physics and chemistry during World War II, from the proximity fuse to the development of fire-fighting foams for use on planes, ships, and submarines. Visit Vesterheim.org to register and for announcements about additional lectures in the series taking place early in 2022. We entered attendees here this evening into a drawing to win a copy of the book Alpha Girls. The book features Sonja's story, and the winners will receive a copy signed by Sonja. Our winners are Jeff Roverud and Caroline Paulson. Congratulations, we'll get you your books soon. Finally, I want to invite you to a reception celebrating the Innovators and Inventors exhibit on Saturday, October 16th from 2 to 3:30 at Vesterheim. We hope you'll join us. This concludes our evening's program. Thank you all so much for making Vesterheim a part of your evening. A special thanks to Sonja Hoel Perkins, Dr. Marin Johnson, my colleagues, and our sponsors, the Thompson Family Foundation, for making this evening's event possible. Thank you so much, and good night, everyone.